Aloha, I'm Osa Tui, President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association, and I'm so pleased to have with us here today at HSTA headquarters the wonderful Senate Education Chairperson, Senator Donna Kim.
It's
Mahalo
nice
for
to
joining
be here.
us.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
This is my area, this is my district, so even more so, I'm happy to be here.
Yes. We're just going to have a little chat today and talk about some of the priorities and some of the things that we've been so happy that the Senator has been pushing forward as the Education Chair this year. You and I are both public school graduates. I'm Castle High School, you're Farrington.
Yep.
Can you tell us about your public school journey?
I'm a proud Farrington governor. It all started growing up in Kali'ipalama. I ended at Likelike Elementary School and progressed on to Kalakaua Intermediate and then to Farrington High School. And for me, that's been what have driven me all my life is street smarts, which is something that you learn growing up in Kalihi and going to public school. And so to me, that's the most important thing in life because, you know, you're not going to remember all the book work, you're not going to remember, you know, all of the lessons that you learn in social studies, but how to get along with people, how to anticipate, how to project, things like that. So.
Correct, yeah. I mean, I don't remember all the stuff that I was studying to take a test for, but I remember the teachers that affected me. Do you know one of the teachers or so that affected you?
I had a couple. Mrs. Nakata was one of my favorite teachers. She was our typing teacher. Mm-hmm. Of course, they don't have typing teachers anymore. We had those typewriters that you, and you go ding, and then you go ding, it would ding, and the whole classroom, you would hear that. But she was one of those that I could go in and sit down and talk story with her and tell her things and stuff like that. Then I had another one, Mrs. Eastman, and she was our speech teacher. So I got involved in speech and debate. So.
Very nice, yes. And for me, it's Mr. Mizuta, a math teacher. He was the reason I became a math teacher. And so, you know, they have an effect on us, right? And so it's important that we have the public school teachers that we have because they make a difference for so many kids.
Exactly. My math teacher, though, I did not like math. I had bad grades in math. So, yeah, math was not a good subject for me.
Well, one wouldn't know that now, but with all the numbers that you have to deal with, right? And everything that you have to take care of. Budgets that are in the millions and
right, but then I don't have to know algebra or trigonometry for any of that.
Correct.
All the new math. Correct. You know, you got to learn how to add and subtract.
Yes.
And then, again, figure it out, right?
So, but with all of that, we appreciate your focus on accountability and making sure that, you know, the public dollars that are getting sent to all of these departments are getting well spent. And I think you continue to highlight how our monies are not always being well spent. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. I think my whole career has been on accountability and transparency in government. I think part of it is growing up with not a lot of resources. You know, both parents had to work, and so we lived from paycheck to paycheck. And so money was scarce, and we had to really be responsible on what we bought, and if we even had money to buy anything. And so every time I look at a dollar spent or a dollar loss, I think about those days, and I think about people out there that really can't afford for us to be inefficient, and these monies can go further. In our schools, there are so many kids that need special attention or needs to be focused on, and yet the dollars are not coming down to the classroom. It's not coming into the teachers. It's up in the bureaucracy, which is something that I've been very vocal about. So yeah, it is very important. And for every time we do a program, for every dollar that we're not efficient with, somebody has to pay for it. Your taxes are going to go up. Somebody pays. There's no free lunch. Right? So we have, you know, everybody's crying for universal free lunch. We want free buses. We want free preschool. We want free college. Everything's free, but it's not free. You know, somebody pays. My son, when he was little, he used to tell me, Mom, what's wrong with free college? Mom, what's wrong with free? As soon as he graduated, started working, he goes, Mom, don't they know that somebody has to pay? I said, thank you. You finally get it. Somebody has to pay.
Yeah, somebody has to pay. And so one of the things I know recently you folks have been talking about is as the Department of Education continues to have more and more bureaucracy, that all requires payment, right? That's paying other people. And so you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, you know, one of the things that the DOE enjoys and the University of Hawaii enjoys, they're the only two entities, is that they can create temporary positions. Okay, they have to fund it themselves, but they can create it. So no other department can do that. But the law says that it's only good for 1 year. It's temporary for 1 year. And so the superintendent has added 2 more deputy superintendents.
Yes.
And it's not just the 2 deputy superintendents. You have the private secretary, you have the executive assistant for each one of them, and then they have staff to go down. So you're talking about a lot more money that is being funneled on top. Now, I haven't seen a change in many of the areas that these deputies and assistant deputies are dealing with. So I'm not sure the answer is not adding more on the top. The answer is adding more on the bottom, or getting resources down into the classrooms, and then identifying those students that need the extra help. Sometimes because you want to focus in on, say, like dyslexia. Not everybody has dyslexia. So you don't want to necessarily have to train every teacher on everything, but you want to separate them out in some way. I mean, not, to call them out, but have resources given to them. So instead of training everybody and spending millions of dollars, let's spend $1 million on these few kids that really need the extra help. Because not everybody needs help in every area.
No,
right?
that's true.
Yeah. So.
And as we see more at the top, usually they create work, and I'll speak for the teachers that their plates continue to get more and more full. They got to do this, they got to do that and the other, and just teaching the kids the basics gets pushed off the plate, right? And
yes, and I say that all the time. I think you've heard me say it, is that we have a teacher shortage, but the shortage is not just due to lack of pay or non-equitable pay, but some of the non-teaching, non-education type responsibilities that are thrust on our teachers, they didn't become a teacher because they wanted to clean up after a child. They don't want to have to give medication. They don't want to have to change diapers. That's not what they signed up for. And then, there's some kids that will fight back or hit and stuff like that, and teachers get injured, right?
Correct.
So those are all areas that we have to focus in on and find out, what exactly is the role of our schools. So more and more DOE accepts all of these additional types of things, which I don't blame them. They want to help the child, but at the same time, the families and the parents have to make sure they take care of their child as well, and not just throw it to the school, give it to the school, and let the teachers take care of it.
Unfortunately, a lot of the times, it's the teacher's fault. The teacher's fault, and blame gets put on the teachers. But,
yeah, and the teachers want to help. I have this real specific one that happened in Linapuni, and some of the advocates was saying, are they going to shut down Linapuni? It's from grades kindergarten to third grade, right? And I said, I have not heard that. And they said, because it's going to be really bad if you do, because a lot of these parents, they work at night and they sleep in, and the kids go to school, they didn't brush their teeth, didn't brush their hair, and so the teachers do that. And I said, wait a minute, that's not the teacher's job. So parents can't just think, I can sleep in and let the school do it.
Yes.
So
oftentimes our teachers have to be surrogate parents in a way, and oftentimes our teachers have to dig into their pockets to pay for meals that the kids don't get. If they come to school late, they haven't had breakfast. If they're not able to focus, then what's the point of doing some of the lessons,
and if
right?
anything goes wrong, then they'll get blamed, right? They bought a child a lunch that perhaps wasn't the freshest lunch, and the kid gets sick, guess they're going to blame the teacher, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's really hard on the teachers.
And as we see the teachers' plates getting full, like you got to do this demand, that demand, this curriculum, that curriculum, it's just the teachers don't have the flexibility to do what they need, that they know the students need, but sorry, we have these mandates that we have to follow.
You have to know on how to identify a bully, how to harassment, child abuse, homelessness. And then they want to put them through all these training, and the training costs a lot of money as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and then a lot of these curriculums and other endeavors come up that they have to do, and so they're not able to spend money on just basics. And so a lot of the time now, our teachers, in order to get what they need, have to go to donors' shoes. They have to go on a website to be able to beg for the money from the community, where we see money being wasted, literally wasted.
No, I see it all the time.
So much waste.
And that's why I get frustrated, and that's why I'm in the committee. I often, I'm passionate about things, and so I really challenge the DOE when they're not doing what they're supposed to do, because I've been around so long that I've heard all the excuses, and I'm tired of hearing the excuses.
Yeah.
Just do the job.
Correct,
And they're
correct.
not, are being paid quite a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so really there's no excuse that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me.
And a lot of this, you know, when you see that happening, but you also see your classrooms falling apart, the buildings are not being maintained and taken care of. You see all these other things where capital improvement monies are not going to where they really should be going. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you've heard me about that as well. So we have a backlog of CIP projects of what $1 billion worth of CIP, and these projects the funding have been encumbered. So they had somehow gotten a contract or somehow gotten some work done. So they encumber the funds so that it does not lapse. Because if they don't do that, then it lapses in 2 years or 3 years. So all of these encumbered projects are sitting on the books undone for various reasons. They didn't pass a certain, after the planning and design, they didn't move forward. Costs went up. So during COVID, a lot of the projects, the prices went up, right? And the supply, demand also was a problem.
Yep.
And so the cost, so now they don't have enough money to finish the project. So the project just sits there. But guess what? Every year they get CIP money for new projects. Now these projects gets lapsed because they don't get encumbered. But in the meantime, you have $1 billion. So the department tells me, they go, well, we have to go through and look at what the priorities are. I said, but those were priorities. When we passed that, you told us they were your priorities. Now they've been on the books for 10 years. They're no longer a priority, I guess. And so you have these new priorities. But some of the schools who felt that was a priority still feel it's a priority.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and then we had 100 million, what we wanted? We wanted 100,000 air conditioning, right? $100 million under Governor Ige. And if you read the audit report, I mean, talk about waste.
Yes.
Talk about, just rushing to meet the deadline and put these air conditioning units in the schools. Some of them don't work. Some of them didn't have the right electric outlets to put them into. It's if you read the audit, and you can read the audit,
yes,
it's online.
It's
it's crazy, the amount of money that was spent.
Or you can just watch the YouTube of your hearing, where you had the auditor there just explaining how he was incredulous, right, that he couldn't find them.
Yes, they didn't have the records. They didn't know what was going on.
Correct.
And surely, the project spans before this new administration and superintendent, but they took over. So you cannot just say, oh, well, it wasn't on my time, because a lot of the people in the system who was keeping the records are still there.
Correct.
They didn't turn over. Just the top people turned over.
And a lot of this air conditioning stuff was pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic came, right? And so we had to pull down all of these, units. We put plexiglass on windows. That had to come off because we had to get the fresh air in. And then we started to ask the department about, okay, what are your stats on, fresh air, and how we could never get that information as well, right?
Yes.
Come to find out, they don't know. They're not keeping account of what they have, don't have.
And they come to hearings unprepared.
Correct.
They don't have the answers. They don't have the numbers. And yet it's their numbers, but they don't have it ready for us. And so I keep telling them, in order for us to pass anything, you have to give us reasons why we need to vote in support of it. And if you don't have the reasons and you don't have the documentation, then we're not going to pass it, right? I mean, you don't go and ask your parents for money and they're just going to give it to you without getting any answers,
Correct.
right? So, but talking about earlier, we talked about how heavy the bureaucracy of the DOE. We have a superintendent, and under the superintendent, we have the chief of staff. And under them, we have 3 now. It used to be 1, but now we have 3 deputy superintendents. Okay, and they each have a private secretary, and they each have coordinated directors or assistants. Then under them, you have 8 superintendents. Okay, so if you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and now 8. Okay, and under those 8, they each have a private secretary and an executive assistant. And under them, you have 15 area superintendents, okay, that we call CAS, complex superintendents. And then they each have a private secretary and they have staff. And then you have the principals, And then you have the teachers, and then you have the students. So it's very, very top heavy, and it keeps growing. But the results and the number of issues that are being resolved is not going down.
Yes.
Yeah. So it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't justify. And these people are paid $200,000 and above. So
Yeah.
they're not low paid.
So with all of these people at the top, one of the bills is to say, let's put a cap, let's not expand them. And, HSTA is in support of that because, again, the more people we put at the top, the more that gets put on our teachers' plates. And so we're happy to, support that. Don't get any bigger at the bureaucracy level.
Yes, exactly. And again, because he can create positions without any kind of legislative approval, nothing stops him from doing that. Even though the law says it's temporary and it can only be there for 1 year, unfortunately, the superintendent was not aware that it could only be there for 1 year.
Yes. And so some of these, as we get more on the teacher's plate, people don't want to go into the profession.
Exactly.
People don't want to become teachers, right? And
Exactly.
so recruitment and retention is another issue that I know you've been trying to deal with as Senate Chair. So.
Absolutely. It's interesting because we had a bill or a resolution saying, urging the DOE to begin retention. I said, what do you mean begin retention? They should be in retention, and we should always be trying to retain our teachers.
Correct.
And I'm saying, and it's not just necessarily the monies, but the kinds of duties that they're out now called upon to do, and the working conditions of the classrooms. So all of that, working together, we need to improve. And it's the DOE that needs to do that.
Yeah, so I know we've been, trying to work with the Teacher Standards Board, and you're trying to, make some changes there as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Teacher Standard Board, for too long, we've just sort of allowed the Teacher Standard Board to be confirmed without really holding them accountable. And now with the teacher shortage and all of the complaints of teachers, we want them in the classrooms and they're having obstacles in getting their license. And so because of that, we ended up not confirming several of the returnees and putting on people that we want qualified teachers, there's no doubt about that. But we also have to keep in mind that we have a shortage and that they are qualified people. They might not have taken their student teaching and their practice when it was supposed to, but they took it, right? And so they're getting so technical that it's keeping these teachers out of the classrooms.
Correct. And just to be clear, because you're the chair of the Senate Education Committee, if the Senate Education Committee advises and consents to a certain person, you as the chair will normally have to vote the way that the committee has voted, right?
Yes.
Even though your committee members may have changed their votes on the floor.
Yeah, and those things happen. Sometimes we don't get all the information, or we don't hear from the area legislator about a particular individual. All we see is their resume, we send out questionnaires, and then we talk with them, but you still don't get the real sense. If they're a returnee, I look at the minutes, I look at their record, and from there we can judge. But it's very difficult to turn somebody down. So when a sitting legislator whose district they're from stands up and says, this person did not reach out to me, this person is not doing what is she supposed to be doing at the schools because she's the principal of that school and so forth. So I'm very open to say, hey, I support you, but why didn't you tell us before we sent in our recommendation? But I'm open to you folks going in, and you want to change that recommendation, by all means do so, because if it was my area, I want to be able to change it. And I'm not going to stand in the way. So if my committee wants to support the area legislator, by all means, and we discussed that, and so we did, and that's all purpose. So again, damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? So if we had all gone down, they would have said, why the Senate Committee, Education Committee Chair said, we're confirming, and then she voted no.
Correct.
What is that all about, right?
Yeah.
So you
like
can't win. You
Exactly.
cannot win, Osa. I
You
tell
cannot
you,
win.
being an elected official is not easy.
Well, I'll say also some of our teachers cannot win. I was talking to some teachers. One of our teachers is a tech coordinator, and he's trying to get licensed. And he asked the licensing board, so what certification do you want me to get? Well, you should be able to figure that out. So, as a former IT person, he went and he looked and he said, okay, I'm going to get this certification. He spent the money, got the certification, turned it into the standards board, and can you guess what they said? They said, nope, we don't accept that one, right? And so our teachers are stuck in story after story after story. So, and one of the things that's recently come up is the department and HSTA believe that 3 years is not long enough. You know, as an emergency hire, some of our teachers, the costs are too much, the time to take. And so we've just said, can we just make it from 3 to 5 years, right?
And I supported that, you know that. We passed the bill out. And again, I agree. And it was explained to me that sometimes these teachers come in, they're not quite sure that they want to go through the process. And so they wait a year or two, or, you know, they get pregnant, or things happen in your life. And not everything can be done in the 3-year time. So definitely, I don't see what's the difference why 5 years would make. Right? You either get a good teacher or you don't.
Correct. Yeah. So the alternative is, let's get rid of this teacher who's invested 3 years and wants to stay, and let's throw them out and bring in someone brand new and start all the way from scratch again.
Doesn't make any sense. Does not make any sense.
Yeah. So teacher recruitment, teacher retention is important. We are so thankful that you've been supportive of the automatic step increases that we've been pushing for. We've been, you know, we've had language in our contract for so long, and so now to see some progress and movement on that.
As a long-time serving legislator, these step movements are not new to me. It comes up every year. I'm always surprised. What? We didn't adopt that yet? What's wrong with this? You know, and so. As the chair now of the committee, I've taken it upon myself, because we need to have priorities. And one of the things I talk with your legislative aide, Jason, is that what is your number one, what is HSTA's number one measure? Because there's so many needs that we got to prioritize. And you give me that one and we will push for it. And that was your number one.
And so we're very thankful to you. We're very thankful to all of our friends of public education, as we say. And then one of the big issues that's come up this year is educator work safety, right? And, you know, the news we saw, and sadly it's only when we saw someone actually getting punched, you know, that, okay, now we need something. See some action. And so we're happy that you're the chair, and we're actually seeing some action because of your chairpersonship.
And that bill almost died too, so we really had to resuscitate it. So, but yeah, I think it's important that teachers need to feel secure going to work, and you know, nothing is ever guaranteed. Teachers still are, you know, they can be violated no matter what, law or no law, right? So, but we want to deter any kind of actions. Sometimes, though, you know, you're dealing with people that have mental issues, and that there's no way you can legislate against something like that. And so just got to be a little bit more careful. Correct.
But in this day and age of social media, right, I've seen parents who are like, you know, going after the teachers for things. And, you know, back in the day, if you were a child and you came home and your parents... You got lickings. You got lickings. If the teacher sent in a bad report about you, no, now they go to school and they sue the teachers. It's the other way around now. The parents, you know, are licking the teachers or the administrators or the athletic directors. And
again, you know, it's become one of entitlement, like, okay, that's your job, teachers. You guys need to take care of my child. So, and that's why, you know, that's why people don't want to come into the profession. Or they come in and then they leave. The retention is bad. And again, like, what are you doing for the retention? So we can keep throwing money at it, but if we don't fix the core problem, then it's going to continue to happen.
Well, this is always our keiki, our future, and we will always want to talk about what the future is. What is your vision for the future of Hawaii public education and our keiki? And
you know, the future, I look at the schools today, and we are dealing with a generation of devices, a generation of lack of tolerance by some of our students. A lot of them, if they come across any kind of obstacles, they won't deal with it. And so we need to be able to put back into the classroom on how do we teach kids to be a little more tolerant? How do we teach them to understand there's so many different kinds of views out there, and that we all have to get along. To me, that's really important. Book work is certainly important as well, but if you can't get along in society, and it's hard for some of these students because they don't have personal reactions because they're on their devices and they deal everything with their device.
Yes.
So when it comes to social interaction, it's missing. The other area is that our schools are so focused on, and I've said this earlier, focused on early college, and so kids don't have time to be kids. They don't have time to go to their proms and go to pep rallies and do all the things that we did as kids, and that's where you learn a lot of stuff. I want to see classrooms where the teacher is not standing in front of 20 kids and lecturing. I want to see student-based learning. I want to see student-based projects, integrating the class into projects. And that's why I introduced the bill I did, is the student-authored books. Books that can be integrated into your curriculum. And the way Kauai did it, the Nihi House Charter School on Kauai, is they told the students, we're going to go on this field trip and want you to take pictures and of things that was interest of you. Didn't tell them anything about a book. And then they came back and said, okay, pick whatever you want and just write a story, whatever interests you. Write a story, how does it relate? They wrote a story and then draw some pictures, and they said, okay, now we're gonna put this in a book. You're each gonna publish your own book. You're gonna take your story, you're gonna take your drawings, you're gonna create a cover, and we're gonna bind it into a book, and you're gonna do all of that. And they're so proud, and they take it home and the parents are proud. And then they have a book night where they come and they introduce their book to the public, to the community, to the parents. And it's something that they can keep. And so you gotta interest the kids. They can't just sit in a classroom. Many of, especially in Kalihi, where I have so many housing families, you have immigrant families, and the parents are working 2 jobs, and they're not there for the students. You gotta interest them in other ways, not just by sitting in the classroom. Give them something that they can be proud of, and realize, hey, I can do this. I can be an author. It's not that hard. I thought it was hard. It's not that hard. And the parents is like, oh, look what my child did, and show it to the uncles and the aunties and stuff. So you got to bring that pride back to the classroom and to the students. So
I for a time I lived in Camp 4 before moving to
I
housing on
lived
the
on
windward
Camp 4
side.
too.
And I think all these kids need to know that they have opportunities, right? That they don't have to be limited by, if you live in public housing, that you're going to be destitute forever. These kids, all of our kids, that's the promise of public education, right? Having that. And I know that you want them to have successful careers. You want them to be financially literate, right?
Exactly. Oh my God, that's more important than anything. So, you don't even have to be from public housing. I wasn't in public housing, but we didn't have money. My parents were just like, okay, we're not going to go to public housing. We're not going to go on food stamps. So we struggled. But even then, it meant a lot for me to be able to get the kind of support that I got from my teachers and from public school. And so it's so important that the students also know that they're supporting them. And it doesn't always come out that way, but I do fight for my area. I do fight for my district, my schools, and I don't go to schools uninvited. I want you to know that. And I don't put pressures on they come and ask me for CIP and ask me, and I'm more than happy to support my schools.
So just know that the teachers also know that you're fighting for them as well, and for the well-being of their keiki in their classrooms, right? And that's what we want. That's what it's ultimately about, right? That we want a better Hawaii.
Yes, and without our teachers, there'd be no kids to go to the university, right? And I keep saying that, but the professors get paid way more than our teachers.
Way more.
And they get to choose when they want to run their classes, and our teachers have to go to school and be there from 8 in the morning till 2 in the whatever time it is. They can't choose when they want to take a break, or they have to be there. And so I always say there's such a big inequity between the pay of our teachers and the pay of our professors. And somehow we need to bridge that.
Yes, well, we're going into bargaining in the fall, so we'll see what we can do about that. But thank you to you, thank you to your whole committee, because I see your entire committee is just dedicated to.
Yes, I have some good members. They ask some tougher questions than I ask, right?
And you've asked hard questions of Board of Ed members, and now I see at Board of Ed meetings like, okay, now they're starting to do their duty asking hard questions.
And we're looking at
of-
putting some new members on the Board of
Yes, yes.
Education.
Okay.
Can I just share a quote with you
Please.
before I leave? I have this quote that I use a lot, and it goes, when a student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I really believe that. When the teacher is there and you're ready, your mind opens up and that teacher are able to then, but we got to get the student ready.
Absolutely.
Ready for that teacher, right? They got to be ready, and that's what I want. I want to see that our students ready, and then the teacher is there for them.
I've appreciated this time with you. Thank you so much
Thank
for spending
you.
with us.
Yeah, and
coming
I've
to-
appreciated the support from
Yes.
HSTA, and Jason has been a wonderful support for
Yes,
us as well.
Jason is
so,
amazing.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much.
Thank you.